Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. I'm Gaurav Sawant. In the past 24 hours, there has been a spike in tension. The United States now claims that Russia has amassed not 1,25,000 but 1,90,000 troops, close to 2 lakh troops on the borders with Ukraine. There is also information that some border areas, and especially some separatist-controlled areas, are being evacuated. They are being cleared. Locals there apprehend that the Ukrainian forces could mount a massive operation. Over the course of the next half hour, we will get you the day's developments, and there is an India connect to the situation here. Tension spikes at the Ukraine-Russia border. US President Joe Biden says threat of invasion very high.
If Russia does invade in the days and weeks ahead, the human cost for Ukraine will be immense.
Satellite images reveal Russia's alleged doublespeak.
Do we want it or not? Of course not. That is why we have offered our proposals to start the negotiation process, which would lead to an agreement of providing equal security for everybody, including our country.
India Today brings you the latest from ground zero. What kind of training are you undergoing, Sai?
Basic tactical stuff, survival and basic medic things. That's it.
From students to military experts.
We are not afraid. We are a big country and Russia will not go to us.
What brings you to Ukraine?
Basically, I saw what was happening on the Ukrainian border, Russia mobilizing, and I wanted to help defend Ukraine and its free people from Russian aggression.
The only channel to bring you all voices on the big story. India Today reporting from Ground Zero, Ukraine. US President Joe Biden claims that Russia has amassed close to 2 lakh soldiers on the borders with Ukraine. The American assessment is that this invasion, as the Americans put it, could come from multiple flanks. It could come from the side of Belarus, where a large number of Russian troops are carrying out an exercise in Belarus. It could come from Crimea. There could be a multi-pronged offensive from the south and the north and the east. And all of this, according to the Americans, is leading to a massive rise in tension. Of course, here in Kiev, we reported from the very prestigious Shevchenko University, there was a convocation there. There is an apprehension something could happen. Professors and teachers, they're talking to students. They're looking at bunkers should the need arise. Now, before I get you that ground report, let's take a look at our top story.
No let-up in the Russia-Ukraine standoff. The US claims Russia has stationed 1,90,000 troops in and around Ukraine's border. The new claim was made by Washington's ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Michael Carpenter. Earlier, the US had pegged the number of Russian troops at around 1 lakh. If the claims are true, this is the most significant military mobilization since the World War. The US and NATO have said Russian President Vladimir Putin's declaration of withdrawal of troops from the border hasn't reflected on the ground. Putin himself has been silent after he made the withdrawal announcement.
There is a spike in tension. US President Joe Biden has said that Russia can attack Ukraine any time. American apprehension is that there would be a false flag operation, and the separatists targeting a kindergarten is an indication that according to the Americans, that Russia is looking for some excuse to target Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Russia has conducted drills in the Black Sea amid heightened tensions. The Russian military has released videos of strategic air defense units firing surface-to-air missiles. As Russia turns up the heat, Poland has rallied behind Ukraine. Warsaw says it will help in any refugee crisis that might be triggered by a Russian invasion of Ukraine.
As for the crisis, that would certainly be what is caused if Russia attacked Ukraine. I want to stress that we are ready to help those who will be forced to leave Ukraine.
The deployment of thousands of Russian forces in Belarus, in addition to the thousands surrounding Ukraine to the east and south, puts some of those forces within 200 miles of the Polish border. If Russia further invades Ukraine, Poland could see tens of thousands of displaced Ukrainians and others flowing across its border trying to save themselves and their families from the scourge of war.
Amid the military buildup, Russia has expelled the second highest ranking American official from the US Embassy in Moscow. Washington has called the decision an escalatory step. While the saber rattling between Russia and NATO continues, people of Ukraine are living in uncertainty. Bureau Report, India Today.
There's uncertainty, there's apprehension, and there's fear in the air. Now, Georgian militia. There is a militia here in Kiev that's training locals to defend themselves. And this training is happening in the heart of Kiev in Ukraine. Georgia, at least these militiamen say, this is history repeating itself. Russia had said they will not invade. They're saying they will withdraw troops. But days later, what's happening on ground? So what are these militiamen doing here in Ukraine? They are training locals here to aid the army, tactical moves. Now, there are some American veterans who are here. They're also a part of this training, whether it's in casualty evacuation, med evacuation, or field dressing, or to boost the morale of soldiers and those who will back the soldiers. There is also an India connect in some of these militiamen who are training to fight. The snow here is quite symbolic of the freeze and ties between Russia and Ukraine. Now, in other times, this is actually a school, but right now, a training ground of sorts for forces, for militia, for civilians to fight at the borders. And you have people from different countries who are currently undergoing training here, being trained by the Georgian militia, the Georgian Legion. For example, Private Williams there is from the United States of America. He's from California. He's a combat medic, a war veteran. And this young man here, Sai, is from Tamil Nadu in India. He's otherwise studying to be an aerospace engineer. And let's talk to Sai. Sai, that's a very interesting insignia that I see here. We see the Ukrainian flag, we see the Georgian flag, and you're actually an Indian here in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I see this dummy weapon in your hand, an AK-47 assault rifle dummy. You came here to study aerospace engineering. What are you studying right now?
I'm studying aerospace engineering in Kharkov. Yeah, that's it.
But you're also studying the art of war.
Yeah.
You've joined a legion.
Yes, I am 3 days ago.
3 days ago, you joined a legion to fight for Ukraine.
Yes, I am.
What kind of training are you undergoing, Sai?
Basic tactical stuff, survival and basic medic things. That's it.
So, will this impact your aerospace engineering?
If that depends on Russia. If they invade, yes.
Okay. So, as an Indian, what made you fight here in Ukraine?
I wanted to be in the army for a long time. Then situation, I came here, gone to university. Now I have many friends here. Further, I have many friends, local friends, families, and yeah, that's why.
Okay. So this training is on, as you can see here. It's snowing in some parts. Snow hasn't melted in others. Private Williams is you're from California, if I got that right, are you?
Yes, sir.
And what brings you to Ukraine?
Basically, I saw what was happening on the Ukrainian border, Russia mobilizing, and I wanted to help defend Ukraine and its free people from Russian aggression.
Right. So, is your involvement restricted to, you're a combat medic, if I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir.
So, as a combat medic, is your involvement here restricted to training or active combat?
Right now, we're a defensive force, so we're defending Ukraine from any type of aggression towards us. Right now, I am mostly teaching CLS classes, tactics, other such like that.
So that would be you teaching combat casualty evacuation and combat medicine and quick bandaging in case you're injured in combat?
Yes, sir, the gist of it.
How many people are undergoing this training? I mean, how many volunteers come almost every other day?
Every other day, so I'm not sure about every other day, but we have multiple people from multiple different countries. I mean, we have India, Britain, America. We got a few others from all over the place, Albania, Georgia. So we got quite a few number of people from all over.
Brilliant. Let's talk to some of the others. So, you know, this training is on here and it's quite real, the kind of training that is happening. Of course, right now with a dummy AK-47, but there's also a real one there. They will be taken to firing ranges, we are told, where they would be fighting. Of course, there are Georgian soldiers also here. For example, this insignia that you see, the Georgian National Legion. They are here fighting, training, and the aim is to ensure, as they say, that they will be able to defend, and they intend going to the borders to ensure that they are able to ensure that the last line of defense is maintained at the border. With cameraman Pawan Kumar in Kiev, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. So there is this India Connect. This youngster wants to fight at the borders and help Ukraine. In the past 24 hours, there has been a spike in tension at borders, especially in some of the separatist-held areas. What we are being told is in certain areas, women and children have been evacuated. They are being sent out. The apprehension is that forces could move into that area to buttress or defend that area better should there be an invasion. All of these may be preventive measures, may be a precautionary step, but it is leading to a spike in tension. Rajesh Pawar, my colleague, spoke to a Ukrainian soldier giving us, and this soldier is just back from one of the borders. He gives us this ground situation.
This soldier is coming from Donetsk right now, which is bang on the border between Russia and Ukraine. He just come back from his duty. So we'll ask him what is the situation in Donetsk. So situation in Donetsk. Это normal now, это очень плохо сейчас. Yes. Плохо. It's very bad. He says situation right now in Donetsk is very tense, and he just come back from there, and he feels situation is not normal and it is pretty tense right now. And how do you feel? You are a young soldier. How do you feel fighting for your country? No? Ты думаешь, ты feel great Ukraine for fighting for Ukraine? Yeah. He's a very young soldier and he just come back from the front line and he feels great fighting for his country. This is Rajesh Pawar from Kyiv for India Today.
And in one of the rebel-held territories in Lugansk, we are being told that people are being evacuated. Able-bodied men are being asked to stay back. Women and children are being evacuated from this area. Now, this is a rebel-held territory, self-proclaimed Republic of Lugansk. And they are saying that the Ukrainian army is likely to start an offensive in this region. What they're also saying is that they've requested their citizens, especially the aged, the women and the children, to leave for Russia where they would be safer. The LPR leaders have said that citizens would be provided facilities to leave for Russia. Of course, they've requested able-bodied men to stay behind. Rajesh Babar now joins me for more on these developments that are taking place. Rajesh, what's the latest that you can tell us? This situation appears to be dynamic but taking a turn, and is it actually for the worse?
I think that there's a change in the situation a little bit in the last few days. I've been frequent to this place, the main train station in Kyiv, which looked very normal just a few days back. But today when I visited that place, it's swarming with armed policemen everywhere. Security has been tightened because they consider it as a strategic asset, and no kind of photography is allowed anymore, and they've increased security over there. As far as the borders are concerned, I could speak to a few soldiers today who just returned from the borders. Situation in Donetsk is same what it was a few days back. Fighting has been going on. Intensity has increased a bit. Whereas on other borders, like Kharkiv and all, the situation is pretty much the same as it was a few days back. There is no obvious movement of troops or any kind of clashes over there.
Fair enough. The situation does appear to be rather fluid at this stage. Rajesh Babar tracking developments there for the moment. Many thanks for joining me. Now, in this uncertain environment, it's almost surreal. Tension in the air and palpable. But when you talk about universities or colleges, they're now emerging from that COVID scare, students rejoining. Today, I had an opportunity to go to the very prestigious Shevchenko University in the heart of Kiev, that iconic red building. There was a convocation on young budding lawyers. After their convocation, I spoke to some of the young women there, and they say they hope that this situation would be amicably resolved, but a large number of youngsters want to volunteer to help the forces of Ukraine. So there may be tension at the borders, but here in Kiev, celebrations of a graduation ceremony, of a convocation. They've completed their law degrees. These young women will be practicing lawyers from tomorrow, and while they celebrate, there is a little tension that appears to be palpable in the air. They hope for a peaceful resolution of the situation. When we spoke to some of them, they hoped that the matter would be either resolved amicably or legally, and not through soldiers at the borders. Of course, tension remains palpably high at the borders, having its impact even on people across the country. With cameraman Pawan Kumar in Kiev, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
We have around 120,000 Russian troops around the border, and we have situation of war around 8 years. Already in Ukraine we have a war in the east of Ukraine. On Donbass, and we have occupied Crimea by Russian Federation. We live in war around 8 years, so we don't have panic. We have a great army.
We are not afraid. We are a big country, and Russia will not go to us. So we love each other. We are Ukrainians. We are Ukraine. So we are a big family.
You indeed are a big family. Are youngsters volunteering to join the forces and to go to the borders?
Yes, if Russia will go to us, we will have forces to take the actions.
Here in Kyiv we have some tension in the air, and this psychological pressure, because we day to day hear about how to behave in case of war, where is banks, where we can save us in case of bombs or.
I think some people maybe feel, but most people hope that no war between Russian and Ukrainian people. We hope for the best. Now it's just a little discuss a lot between people, but we hope for the best.
But I'm very calm because I know that Ukrainian force is very strong now. It's not 14 years. And all vote help our country to send a lot of plane with modern weapons.
So students hope that the situation would be amicably resolved, and that is something that their professors and teachers are also talking about. But what is the reason for this crisis? Russia is very clear. Russia does not want NATO in its backyard, and Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be a part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The United States, on the other hand, and NATO allies, they are backing Ukraine, at least for now, to the hilt, except they're not committing men on ground. A large number of American weapons and NATO-grade weapons are flying into Ukraine for better defense of Ukraine, and this includes anti-tank guided missiles and a lot of other military hardware. Ukrainians say it's our decision whether we want to be a part of NATO or European Union or not. Russia will no longer impose its will on us, and Russia says their core security will be impacted in case NATO comes to their backyard. That's the background of this entire crisis.
De forma muito especial, Mr. President, we share common values such as belief in God and the defense of the family. Also, we are in solidarity with all those countries who want to commit themselves to peace.
The Brazilian president was in Moscow at a time when the West were warning of Russia's belligerence, escalating the crisis in Ukraine.
Well, unfortunately, we're not anywhere near the end or the beginning of this crisis, which means that, we're somewhere in basically a rapidly evolving situation, and I think we're going to be in for the long haul of tensions around Ukraine. So, the basic message is buckle up, because this is going to be very difficult.
Tensions spiked on Thursday along the line that separates Ukrainian forces from Russian-backed separatists in the country's east. Each side accused the other of intensive shelling. Ukrainian military command said shells hit a kindergarten in the town of Stanitsia, Luhanska, wounding 2 teachers.
It was a very powerful explosion, and then we heard the sound of broken glass. The children were very scared. Some kids started crying immediately, and the explosions continued for the next 20 minutes.
The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, visiting Ukrainian troops in Donetsk region, tweeted that the kindergarten shelling by pro-Russian forces was a big provocation.
It's important now to clarify for the entire world that these projectiles came from temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, controlled by Russia, because now Russian propaganda is trying to distort the reality and accuse Ukraine of shelling. We are convinced they will not succeed in doing this.
A side effect of the escalating tensions between Ukraine and Russia has been the rise in price of crude oil and natural gas. Even as Moscow seems to be the aggressor in this crisis, an invasion of Ukraine and the conventional war that is bound to follow might have a larger economic impact on global economy, it is felt. Experts say there are other options that Russia might ultimately adopt to rein in Ukraine, going the Western way.
That Putin has given Russia a whole host of options of things that he can do. So we will not have changed the goals. The goal is of getting a grip on Ukraine, preventing Ukraine from going off on its own independent foreign security policy. But Putin might then choose other options that are before him. Cyber operations, subversive activity. They could try to poison President Zelensky of Ukraine. They've certainly done that on plenty of occasions. One of the other previous presidents of Ukraine, Yushchenko, was poisoned with dioxin.
Despite the increasing crescendo of Western censor, Russia continues to deny any intention of invading Ukraine. Russia, however, has also been firmly reiterating its right to deploy troops wherever necessary to counter NATO threats. And that brings the whole crisis back to Ukraine, where its proposed admittance into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is what seems to upset Moscow in general and President Putin of Russia in particular.
The situation is fluid and we will continue to report from ground zero, but that is all I have for you on this special broadcast from Kiev. Many thanks for watching.